Hello, everybody. My name is Zojalyx, and welcome back to another episode of the Countertop, which is where we discuss VeggieTales theories and anything that maybe has to do with the logic behind VeggieTales. So, what we covered in the last episode is we were talking about our Larryboy theory, which, if you haven't seen any of those videos, they will be linked in the description below. Please go check those out because those are going to be some of the most useful videos in order to understand the information that we are talking about here. But what we are talking about, if you just need a quick little brief summary, is we were talking about the origins of Larryboy. We're talking about where did he come from, where did he go.
Where did you come from, Cotton Eye Joe?
That was a bad joke. I apologize. Um, in the last video, we talked about we started going through the timeline, talking about where Larryboy's family begins, and then continuing in brief summary as to how it progresses throughout the entire series of VeggieTales. We started with Mac Larry and the Stinky Cheese battle, and we moved on to Robin Good, It Is Not So Merry Men, thinking that the family that Larryboy then originates from starts in the powerful family of Chognorius, and then through the timeline goes down to then Robin Good, and then we're going to continue to go down into Duke as we get into Duke and the Great Pie War. So, without further ado, let's dive right in and get started.
It kinda is later. Oui. Let's go to the book. Page!
So, in the events of Duke and the Great Pie War, we are introduced to Duke. He is a knight of the Kingdom of Scone. We don't actually know Duke's last name. That's something that is not talked about in the episode itself. But we do know that Duke is a knight of the Kingdom of Scone, which probably after some rolling around of kingdoms and stuff within the world due to wars and different stuff like that, we are looking at then Scone, which is probably some sort of descendant of the kingdom in Sherwood Forest that was talked about in Robin Good Is Not So Merry Men. So Duke is we're just going to call him now Duke. This is where kind of the timeline gets a little funky because it's a little bit after Robin Good, but still quite a bit before where we actually get to where the mantle of Larryboy begins. Somewhere in this time, it is important that we know that there is a break in the family line from which we talked about with Archimedes, talked about in Mac Larry and the Stinky Cheese battle, and where we get Archibald. Now, this is where the information kind of gets lost because obviously they haven't done everything in history and we are just lacking some of that information. Anyway, so now we have Duke, and then we have Lucas, Duke's little compatriot person, which we know is Bob, who would be a descendant from the sheriff. I don't actually remember his real name. I just know it's Sheriff Mediocre. I just refer to him as Sheriff Mediocre because that scene was absolutely hilarious. So we have the descendant of the sheriff, and then that is Lucas, becomes his good friend after all of the events of Robin Good and Is Not So Merry Men. And this actually is where we'll get into the character of Thingamabob because it will then create another family relationship, but that we will talk about Thingamabob as we get more into the modern day era of Larryboy, probably in some future video. Anyway, Duke is going through his life trying to become a knight, and he's failing epically at it. It's not pretty. But anyway, on his way after night school, he runs into and is introduced to the wonderful
Sweet Petunia.
And this is where things get a little complicated. So, Petunia was a princess in the kingdom of Rhubarb, got married to the son of Gildersleeve the Invincible, which is Ryan the Not So Invincible. And then the Great Pie War begins between the Kingdom of Scone and the Rhubarbarians, Petunia being a princess of Rhubarb, Ryan being a very influential member in the Kingdom of Scone, possibly even the Prince of Scone. Well, they go to war. Ryan and Gildersleeve the Invincible get pied because apparently they're not actually invincible. It's not Ryan the not invincible, it is Ryan the less Ryan the
Fine, I'll do it myself.
Ryan, the only slightly less invincible. Oh!
Ryan and Gildersleeve are now killed in war, which leaves Nona as a widow and Petunia also as a widow. And Petunia still has the opportunity to live in her life of royalty in the Kingdom of Rhubarb, but she decides to forsake her life of royalty in order to take care of her mother-in-law, Nona. There's actually kind of a pretty strong parallel to the Book of Ruth there. Didn't actually think about it, but there it is. Haha, biblical truth. Anyway, so they go and they're living extraordinarily poor in the kingdom of Scone, to which then Duke comes along and is asked to joust for Nona and Petunia in order to help them to survive. Duke then offers to joust, and he understands that he has to joust against Gildersleeve's brother, which is the wonderful man Otis the Elevated. And after a very... So they go to joust. After a very... I don't want to say the word intense.
Whoa, 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 whoa!
Because it was more awkward. But after a dazzling...
Wait, you want to know who's on first?
Correct. Next.
What?
Absolutely correct. And third?
I don't know.
Correct.
Wait, who went third?
Wrong.
Well, not really dazzling either. Well, they joust. And after they joust, Otis the Elevated is defeated and Duke wins, thus getting the key to Gildersleeve's castle, as well as the key to the vault. And then he takes his wonderful bride, Petunia, in marriage, and they live happily ever after, the end. So now, Duke has ascended to even more power within this kingdom here. He just... a lot of power. And so now, then, Duke is living as the King of Scone with Petunia, his wonderful bride, as the queen. And then eventually they have a child, because that's what you do when you get married. You have children. And their child is now the less slightly incredible, but yet still very notable, King George. Which is where we move on to our next video, King George and the Ducky. Which, King George and the Ducky only really is just a way to continue the timeline. There's not really any real key events in there that really happen. You know the story of King George and the Ducky. George has a very unhealthy obsession with his duck. He spots Thomas having fun with his duck in the bath, and then after that he sees the duck and is like,
I must have it, I must get it, you must go and get it for me.
And then, well, he sneaks off wearing a terrible disguise, steals the duck, sends Thomas out into battle because the Great Pie War is still happening. The Pie War then concludes with Thomas getting creamed, but he survives after an intense battle with Shell Shock and a nice, wonderful bath in King George's bath. Thomas then gets his senses, which is then also where we are introduced to the character of Ricochet. Again, more information there we will then dive into as we get deeper on into the modern day areas of the League of Incredible Vegetables and what we see in the current state of VeggieTales today. But again, that will be covered in later videos. So anyway, after King George realizes that he is a terrible person and he literally tried to get Thomas murdered all in the name of a duck, he asks Thomas to forgive him. Thomas says, sure fam, you tried to kill me, but it's alright, you're my pal and I will forgive you because that's what heroes do. And then they sing a song about selfishness, and then you fade out after a wonderful medley of
Wait a minute.
No, it weren't.
Wasn't. It should be.
And that's really all that's going to be necessary for these videos. You understand now where we've covered in the last two videos where the lineage of Chognorius has descended throughout time to continue to get power and power and power and gaining more wealth throughout the Roman Empire. Now, eventually, we're going to be doing kind of a big time gap here because we're losing a lot of information from pretty much the collapse of the Roman Empire, which is where we would get the collapse of the Kingdom of Scone, to then what we have as modern day America. There's not really much information that's given there, but there's going to be information that is going to be vital within the little bits of information that we do have between what we can take from history as well as what we will take then from where we're going to be truly getting to the beginning of Larryboy, which is in Larryboy and the Bad Apple, when Alfred goes to the library to explain, to understand where the spider webs were coming from. But we'll get to that in the next video, because I do believe we are out of time. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys want to catch up or just continue to watch the other videos, check them out in the description below. That will be extremely helpful for you guys to get the information necessary. And if you guys are wondering where some of this information is coming from, please check out our Discord in the description below, where you can then, we have a Countertop section where you can then talk about different things. You can ask questions about the theory, come up with any more theories of your own, as well as give suggestions for maybe if there's a theory that you have that maybe you want to be covered in the Countertop, or just certain things, or if there's certain questions that you have that we could maybe talk about in a Countertop video. This whole thing is not necessarily just theories, it is just specifically anything that maybe could make sense, including theories. So it's kind of like a VeggieTales explained segment of Mediocre concept. And with that, thank you guys again so much for watching. I hope you guys really enjoyed this video, and I will see you all in the next instance of the Countertop, or in Discord later on. Have a good day.
Dance with me, Lampy!